Libra, get ready. An angel will cross your path and everything will change. Have you ever wondered how you'll recognize the moment when everything changes? Not the date, not the place, the exact instant when someone or something will cross your path and reorganize your entire life from the inside. If you're a Libra, you've probably already answered this question for yourself without realizing it. You believe you'll feel it, that there will be a sign, a shiver, an emotional certainty impossible to confuse with anything else. It's almost an invisible contract you made with yourself. When it arrives, I'll know. But what if that contract is flawed from the start? Imagine someone who trusts their sleep so much that they've never needed to set an alarm. They sleep believing they'll wake up at the right time because they always have. But nobody's guaranteed that this internal alarm clock will ring loud enough this time. What if the warning you're waiting for never comes as a sound? What if it comes as an image, something that needs to be seen, not heard, that only appears to those who have trained their eyes? Because that's where the first problem lies. Libra doesn't grow up learning to see clearly, it grows up learning to soften. From an early age, you understood that disagreeing creates distance, and you kept adjusting until it became automatic, a permanent filter between you and the world, a thin, almost invisible glass that fogs just enough to make everything seem tolerable, never too clear to hurt. You've learned to call this balance, emotional maturity, knowing how to handle things calmly. But what if what you call calm is in fact the only image you've ever learned to see? What if you've never, not even once, seen anything important with complete clarity? Without the filter, without the automatic adjustment, without the usual smoothing? This changes everything, because it means you're not waiting for a signal that hasn't arrived yet. You might be looking at it now, blurry, thinking you already understand what's on the other side of the glass. And there's a second layer, even more silent. While you softened the world outside, you also learned to monitor the emotional temperature of those around you. A walking thermometer, always on, adjusting your tone, your posture, your words, according to the emotional climate of the room. You sense the other person's discomfort before they realize it. You soften things before friction even exists. This isn't weakness, it's a real skill, but it comes at a cost that almost no one has mentioned. While your thermometer is pointed outward, checking the temperature of others, no one is checking yours. You may have had an emotional fever for weeks, for months, and not know it, because all your trained attention is elsewhere. And what if, precisely in that blind spot, at the exact moment when your own temperature should be being read, someone or something decisive were passing very slowly in front of you, without any alarm, without any announced storm? Because that's how it usually happens, not with a bang, not with the intensity you've been trained to expect. The encounters that truly reshape a life almost never arrive seeming important. They arrive looking like any ordinary Tuesday. A conversation that could have been any conversation, a face that could be just another face. And it's precisely this disguise of normalcy that deceives those who are used to looking for signs that are too big to be true. So if disguise is normality itself, the question remains, what exactly would you need to train yourself to notice the difference between any given day and the real day when everything changes? This question was left open on purpose because it can't be answered with more theory. It can be answered with a concrete change in how you pay attention to yourself. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. Doesn't treat Libra as a fixed map of predictions, but rather as a daily exercise to clear precisely that foggy glass we're talking about. It exists to teach you to stop spending all your energy calibrating the peace of others and start looking with the same attention at what's happening inside you. It's not about predicting when the encounter will arrive. It's about developing the ability to recognize what's already in front of you, even when it doesn't come wrapped in any drama. If you've gotten this far feeling that discomfort of recognizing a pattern in yourself, it's because some part of you already knows you need to change this way of paying attention. And this kind of recognition rarely returns with the same force later. It's easier to act now, while the awareness is still sharp, than to wait for a second warning that might not come so clearly. You already possess the genius. You just need to unlock it. Access is in the first comment, but the last few units are disappearing. Click now and start this transformation. And in the meantime, tell me in the comments, is there any encounter from your past that, looking back now, you realize you almost missed? Everything changes. It's not about waiting for a bigger sign. It's about being wary of days that are too short. Because that's what nobody told you. The encounters that truly reshape a life almost never arrive looking important. They arrive looking like any ordinary Tuesday, a conversation that could have been any conversation, a face that could be just another face among many. And it's precisely this disguise of normalcy that deceives those who have been trained to look for signs that are too big to be true. Think about what usually happens when someone waits for a storm to realize something has changed. They keep an eye on the dark sky, the strong wind, the sound of thunder, and miss the different breeze that came in through the open window without warning. There's no loud noise in that breeze. There's only a subtle change in air temperature, almost imperceptible, that only someone paying close attention can notice before it's already gone. So if the disguise of the right encounter is precisely normality, what would you need to train yourself to notice this difference? The answer is uncomfortable, because it has nothing to do with paying attention to others, and everything to do with paying attention to yourself. You would need to train your perception of when something within you reacts in a discrete, almost invisible way, in the presence of a person or situation that at first glance seems just another one among many. A slight deviation in your own internal temperature, which you wouldn't normally even register because you're too busy regulating everyone else's temperature around you. Consider this. How many times in your life have you met someone and had the unsettling feeling of already knowing too much about them, too quickly, for no apparent reason? A familiarity that didn't stem from facts, but from somewhere else, something quieter. And how many times have you dismissed this feeling because it wasn't accompanied by fireworks, because it seemed like too much of an exaggeration to trust something so subtle? That's exactly the trap. You've been trained to distrust the subtle and trust only the obvious, when most of the time it's the subtle that carries the most accurate information. There's a difference between noticing a person and recognizing a person. Noticing is superficial. It's what anyone can do. Recognizing requires you to stop, even if just for a second, and feel the true weight of that moment, without already calculating how to soften your own reaction so as not to seem strange, not to seem too intense, to keep everything within the acceptable tone you've learned to maintain your whole life. And perhaps that's precisely where the most important point of this video so far lies. The encounter that changes everything doesn't need to be recognized by the person in front of you. It needs to be recognized within yourself first. It's your own reaction, discreet, almost silent, that carries the real information, not how special that person or situation seems from the outside, enough to deserve your full attention. There's a price to pay for always keeping calm, and almost no one has presented you with the bill. Every time you choose to soften the blow instead of facing what you're feeling, you pay a small, almost invisible fee. A fee that doesn't appear all at once, but accumulates month after month, year after year, slowly eroding your ability to perceive what really matters. It's like maintaining a subscription you don't even remember signing up for, but which continues to deduct endlessly from your emotional account. And the problem is that this fee isn't charged in money, it's charged in perception. Every time you choose peace over clarity, a part of your sensitivity to recognize what is genuinely important becomes a little more blurred, not all at once, slowly, in the way that nobody realizes they're losing weight until they try on their old clothes and they no longer fit. So the troubling question arises: how many of those moments you called calm throughout your life were actually a disguised version of a choice you didn't even know you were making? How many times was the silence you chose to maintain in reality a decision not to face something that demanded attention? And the most curious thing is that this type of choice never seems like a choice while it's happening. It just seems like common sense. It seems like maturity. It seems like the most balanced attitude possible in the face of a delicate situation. Only later, looking from afar, does it become clear that there was indeed a fork in the road at that moment, and that LIBRA almost always chose the path that required less confrontation with its own discomfort, not necessarily the truest path. If this question bothered you, it's because it touched on something real, and recognizing your own pattern, although uncomfortable, is the first step to stop repeating it unconsciously. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose addresses precisely this point. It helps Libra identify in practice the moments when the search for harmony has become an escape from oneself. It's not about ceasing to be conciliatory. It's about no longer blindly paying this invisible price. It's about recovering the clarity that constant smoothing has gradually erased. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Now I want to invite you to an uncomfortable exercise. Think of a moment in your past. It doesn't have to be the most obvious, when something or someone crossed your path and you downplayed it, maybe out of fear of the friction that would come later. Maybe because it didn't seem like the right time. Maybe because, honestly, that person or that situation didn't come wrapped in any grand signal. It's like flipping through an old photo album and realizing only now that there's someone smiling in the background of several important photos from your life. Always there, present, never noticed, because your attention was always focused on the center of the image, on what seemed obvious, on what generated less discomfort to look at directly. And if this has already happened once, without you noticing, what exactly guarantees that it isn't happening again right now, while you're watching this video thinking you're just understanding a concept about your sign? Think about how many times you've told yourself that it wasn't the right time to delve deeper into something. A friendship that could have turned into something else. An opportunity that required a risk you preferred not to take, because taking risks creates instability. And instability is exactly what Libra has been trained to avoid at all costs. Each of these times has one thing in common. At the moment they happened, they seemed like rational, thoughtful, mature decisions. Only time, looking back, reveals that many of them were, in fact, escapes disguised as emotional responsibility. This isn't about guilt, it's about honesty. Because as long as you keep calling these choices prudence, you'll never develop the kind of awareness needed to avoid repeating the pattern. And the pattern, without exception, will repeat itself. Because patterns don't ask permission, they just repeat themselves until someone decides to confront them directly. Perhaps it's worth pausing for a second now and letting that specific memory surface more clearly. Not to dwell on the past, but to recognize the exact form that this escape usually takes in you. Because it's this form, this personal signature of how you avoid discomfort that will repeat itself next time, only with a slightly different guise, difficult enough to recognize if you don't know beforehand what you're looking for. Perhaps the name or face has already appeared in your mind while you were reading this, and perhaps that is precisely the proof that there is a relational pattern repeating itself without you having consciously chosen to repeat it. That's why the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose dedicates a section to mapping Libra's relational patterns, not to blame the past, but to provide concrete tools for recognizing them next time, before the moment passes unnoticed. True inner beauty isn't about avoiding the discomfort of looking. It's about traversing it with greater awareness. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Now comes the most uncomfortable part of all this. Truly acknowledging the encounter that changes everything requires, for a few moments, letting go of precisely what you cherish most, your own equilibrium. Clarity, before liberating, is unsettling. It shatters the smooth surface you've spent a lifetime building. It's like having to break through the thin ice of a frozen lake to reach the clean water below. The sound of the cracking ice is unsettling, frightening, and seems destructive for a second. But it's the only way to reach what was there all along, untouched, waiting for someone willing to make that noise. What if the discomfort you're trying so hard to avoid, the very discomfort you might be feeling right now as you listen to this, is actually the very sign you swore you'd recognize when it arrived? Think about it. You've spent your whole life waiting for the sign to come as peace, as quiet certainty, as that gentle feeling of, this is right. But that's never how decisive moments usually announce themselves. They arrive like a knot in your stomach that you can't explain, like an urge to retreat right in front of the person or situation that matters most, like an uncomfortable silence that you try to fill too quickly, just so you don't have to stay in it. You've learned to interpret this discomfort as a warning of danger, a signal to retreat and return to familiar, smooth, predictable territory. But there's another possible interpretation, harder to accept. Perhaps this discomfort isn't a warning of danger, but a warning of importance. The things that truly weigh you down rarely enter your life in absolute silence. They make noise, even if that noise is only internal, only yours, only perceptible to those who stop long enough to listen. This is perhaps the most difficult inversion to accept in everything that has been said so far. The balance you value so much shouldn't mean the absence of shock. It should mean the ability to weather the shock without shattering. These are completely different things, but Libras have been taught as if they were synonyms their entire lives. If this discomfort is alive within you now, don't put it off until later. This is the kind of recognition that Libras tend to postpone until it fades away on its own. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose exists to restore your agency at this very moment, to show you that you don't have to choose between peace and truth. You just need to stop treating them as opposites. True balance has never been about avoiding the sound of cracking ice. It's about trusting that clean water is waiting on the other side. You already possess the genius. You just need to unlock it. Access is in the first comment, but the last few units are disappearing. Click now and start this transformation. In the end, perhaps the most important turning point is this. You will never be able to accurately predict the day when everything changes. Nobody can. No sign can. What is truly within your reach is keeping your own glass clean enough to recognize the change when it arrives, even if it arrives disguised as an ordinary day. Libra doesn't need to transform into someone who anticipates storms. Libra just needs to stop spending all its energy smoothing over the outside world and return some of that attention inward, to itself, to its own temperature, to its own reflection that insists on appearing blurry whenever no one cleans the window. Because clarity, in the end, is what truly protects. Not forced harmony, not silence maintained at any cost. The ability to look straight ahead, without haste, without panic, and recognize what has always been there, waiting on the other side of the glass, to finally be seen. Perhaps the encounter that changes everything has already passed close to you more than once, disguised as ordinary, disguised as any other Tuesday, disguised as a face too familiar to seem important. And perhaps it is yet to come, in exactly the same discreet way, without warning, without thunder, without any guarantee that you will notice it the first time. What changes from now on is not the world outside. It's your willingness to clean your own glass before deciding what's on the other side. It's exchanging the comfortable certainty that you will simply know for the more honest practice of learning to see. Libra has always deeply understood balance. Perhaps it's time to understand with the same depth, clarity, because one doesn't truly exist without the other.